Good evening, everyone, to the televised meeting on Facebook of our Government Council, our Tuesday night meeting of the Committee of the Whole. I'll call the meeting to order. And first of all, before we go any further on this part, I have a long service award item to deal with first. Councillor Calvin Doshimo from NSFM, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. Our sincere congratulations to those receiving this award. Their dedication to municipal government is impressive and much appreciated by NSFM as an organization, and we are sure by all constituents. So I would like to ask our warden to make a presentation.
Wow, thank you, merci.
"20 years. Does it seem like 20 years, Calvin?
Wow.
Calvin, when you first started, was it 3 years or 4 years?
4 years.
4 years, remember. Thank you so much, and congratulations on behalf of council.
Thanks again.
Okay, next we have the approval of the agenda, any additions or whatever.
So, second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nay, motion carried. I would like to say that Lucien LeBlanc, Councillor LeBlanc, has sent his regrets. Any conflicts of interest declarations by any of the councillors? If not, we'll move on to presentation, Western REN, the energy study, and this is being presented through Zoom, so I'm not totally sure if, I'll ask the CEO, can the public see this? Do you know?
They will be able to see it. Yeah, they've made some last minute changes, and so they should be able to see this.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, Western REN, you're on the spot. Welcome.
Okay. So can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So I am Angélique Leblanc. I am CEO of the Western Regional Enterprise Network, and Evan Nemeth is with me tonight. He is one of our economic development officers. You all know Evan. So I wanted to start off this evening by thanking the council from the municipality of Argyll for the recent signature of our new 5-year intermunicipal agreement. So we're very appreciative of that, and we recognize that that support is truly an investment in the region's future and the long-term investment in economic development. So it is a long game. It's not something that you can just do in 1 or 2 years. And this is something that I think will be illustrated by the presentation that we're going to do to you tonight, present to you tonight. So some of the challenges that we face in Western Nova Scotia are fundamental barriers to economic development. So they require that urgent, focused attention. And you see these challenges addressed in our strategy. Issues such as finding workers, keeping workers. I'm sure you've been hearing that for years. You continue to hear that. Access to reliable internet. So we were very pleased to have some positive announcements recently for the municipality of Argyll and across the region. And a lot of that is a credit to the work that Evan has done and worked very closely with you. And another barrier that we have in the region is access to a reliable energy system. So when we talk about power, the electrical grid and having access to that reliable supply without frequent interruption, that's something that is also critical for economic development. So these are issues that are very complex. They require significant involvement by a number of partners and very far from being a quick and easy fix like you've seen on the internet file. So tonight, what we'd like to do is present to you a study that we've recently completed on energy in the Western region. And this is the first step to address some of the issues and the barriers that we feel there are around energy in the region. So what we've done is we have pre-recorded this presentation for you. And thanks for letting us present to you via Zoom this evening. And hopefully the technology is all going to work out. And we wanted to make sure that we had a consistent presentation across the region. You're the 7th council that we present to this evening. So we've pre-recorded it. You're going to hear Evan's voice. And then at the end, we would be happy to take any questions and have discussion at the end of that presentation. So we're ready, Scott.
All right, here comes.
Or Evan, thank you.
Hello, councillors. I am Evan Nemeth, an Economic Development Officer for the Western Regional Enterprise Network. In this recorded presentation, I will introduce you to the Western Region Energy Investment Plan. The transmission lines that enter the Western Region through the Valley Corridor are 69 kilovolt lines from the Tremont/Greenwood area and onwards. The 69 kilovolt lines are the red lines on the image on your screen, and they have the smallest capacity of the lines listed in the image. These lines, in addition to the blue 138 kilovolt lines along the south shore, are responsible for the delivery of power to the local power grid that powers the region's households, businesses, and institutions. They also allow for the transmission of energy generated in the region to other areas that need it in the province and beyond. The 69 kilovolt lines running from Tremont to Yarmouth have limited capacity remaining on them for the transmission of energy. This limited capacity has the potential to limit the expansion of existing businesses within the region and the attraction of new businesses to the region. In addition, this area has substantial green energy opportunities with strong coastal winds, large powerful tides, and some of the highest photovoltaic potential in Canada. With limited space on the transmission lines for the export of energy, there is limited potential to take advantage of these opportunities. Aside from the status of the transmission system, a community energy planning document from the town of Bridgewater identified the cost of energy in their community as $89 million in 2016 alone, with potential for energy efficiency models to save businesses and residents a combined $2 billion by 2050. In February 2019, the Western Regional Enterprise Network, with funding support from the Department of Energy and Mines Low Carbon Communities Fund, contracted consultants at Sustainable Solutions Group, or SSG, to assist with the development of an energy investment plan for the Western region. Their objectives were to create a baseline of energy consumption to inform decision-making, to identify opportunities for energy efficiency improvements for existing and future buildings, to identify opportunities for green energy generation and storage within the region, and identify opportunities for district energy and heating, providing a market for waste wood from the forestry industry. Using a variety of data sources, including Property Valuation Services Corporation, Nova Scotia Power Inc., fuel sales data, WasteCheck, and our municipal partners, the consultants at SSG estimated that energy purchases in the Western region in 2016 amounted to $327 million, with the average household spending $5,800 annually on energy in its various forms, such as gas, diesel, firewood, furnace oil, and electricity. If opportunities can be found to reduce expenditures on energy generated outside of our region, this can help to keep funds in the local economy and the pockets of residents and businesses. The highest energy demand in the region was attributed to both land and marine transportation, representing a combined 68%. As such, gasoline and diesel represented the highest energy sources. Electricity amounted to just 15% of energy demand in the region for 2016, though that percentage is expected to climb drastically over time with greater adoption of heat pump technologies and electric vehicles. Acknowledging that the region's electricity demands will only grow over time, there are two means to create space on the transmission lines. The first is to reduce demand by increasing energy efficiency and energy conservation at businesses, institutions, municipal buildings, and households. This can be done by improving insulation, installing more energy efficient appliances, adopting more energy efficient heat generators such as heat pumps, and using smart technology to optimize the times of day that the energy is used. While there are expenditures required to create these efficiencies, they will directly translate to cost savings over time. The second method is to increase the supply of energy by creating more green energy generation sites within the Western region, such as solar, tidal, wind, biogas, or district energy. This too will require expenditures, but they will translate into revenue over time. The additional benefits to these actions are that they would reduce the reliance on imported energy, thereby reducing the likelihood and duration of power outages. A list of 26 energy opportunities were identified by SSG that could improve energy efficiency and increase energy generation, all while lowering greenhouse gas emissions. They have been consolidated into categories which I will touch on quickly. Building retrofits and energy efficiency upgrades such as insulation improvements, water efficiency improvements, and heat pumps would lower the total energy required to heat buildings. Cellulose insulation made from waste wood or recycled newspaper has similar thermal performance to fiberglass insulation and can be blown into the wall cavities or installed as bats. Waste wood typically has a value of $110 per ton as fuel, while cellulose insulation is worth 10 times that amount. This creates a new market for waste wood. Electric vehicles will increase the reliance on electricity as a fuel source, but the efficiencies gained from the above two opportunities will more than compensate for them. Further, they are typically charged overnight, reducing the demand on peak hours. Hydrogen is useful as a fuel that has potential for the high energy demands of the marine transportation sector. Power to hydrogen uses periods of excess generation from renewable energy to generate hydrogen using electrolysis. The figure on the screen displays that the total energy consumed if these energy efficiency actions are implemented will roughly halve the total amount of energy consumed in the region. The clean energy scenario envisions the installation of 221 megawatts of combined wind and tidal energy, as well as 161 megawatts of solar PV, primarily for local consumption. Each installation would be accompanied by energy storage such as batteries to balance the inconsistent generation characteristics of these renewable technologies. The winds don't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and the tides slow 4 times a day. A share of the solar PV capacity will be installed on homes and businesses through a program such as Net Metered. Organic waste from the agriculture, fisheries, and forestry sectors has the potential to be used in an anaerobic digester, similar to the facility that had been running in Weymouth. It is estimated that the equivalent to approximately 300,000 liters of diesel could be generated each year from a site similar in scale to that in Weymouth. The figure on the screen displays that the total energy generated within the region will dramatically increase as the need for electricity increases over time. By 2050, it projects a scenario in which all the energy that the region needs is generated from within the region itself. Each of the opportunities in the Western Region Energy Investment Plan projects the net change in person years of employment or job opportunities associated with them. In total, it is estimated that there is the potential to generate almost 4,800 person years of employment by 2050, or an average of 160 jobs per year. While you'll notice that the transportation sector implies that there would be a rather steep decline in employment, this is primarily reflected in the manufacturing of road-based vehicles due to automation, and those jobs are not typically located within our part of the world. These jobs would often be the sort that would require post-secondary education, which would provide an opportunity for the region's Nova Scotia Community College Burridge campus and University St. Anne to develop and train the workforce. There is presently a global appetite for green energy and green energy technologies to combat climate change. In Canada, there is funding available through the Federal Investing in Canada Plan, with a total of $828 million for projects in Nova Scotia alone, of which green energy projects are applicable. Invest Nova Scotia has a fund for projects between $500,000 to $3 million, which includes green energy projects. And the federal Build Canada Small Communities Fund has a total of $42.6 million for Nova Scotia that includes a green energy component. In closing, the opportunities within the plan, if implemented, have the potential to lower energy expenditures through increased efficiencies, increase energy revenues through the generation and storage of energy, support our forestry and fisheries industries by offering markets for their waste streams, improve the region's energy security by utilizing locally generated energy, and create space on the transmission lines for the export of energy to other regions. The Western Regional Enterprise Network released a second request for proposals in August 2020 for implementation services to enact the actions located within the Western Region Energy Investment Plan. The work was awarded to MCC Energy Strategies, Inc. Their role will be to identify the top 2 to 4 opportunities located within the Energy Investment Plan, engage with relevant stakeholders such as private sector, industry organizations, Nova Scotia Power, etc., to identify relevant funding opportunities or financial instruments, and to submit application to those funds. The work is now underway and will continue into this winter. I would like to thank you all for your time.
All right.
All right, so just to reiterate, maybe to illustrate from an economic development perspective why we are interested in a project like this, because there are multiple reasons why we feel it's the right thing to do. But from that specific perspective, we're interested in having more money circulating locally. We're interested in the new innovative job creation potential. It could be a means to retain talent in the region, to retain youth, and to attract new talent to the region as well. Of course, the part that I think goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, is the investment in a sustainable future. So we want to see our region in that position. It's been identified as a board priority to quickly move to the next stage of this work, which would be identifying those top 2 or 3 opportunities that would be the best for a regional economic return. So we want to position the region for those projects, and it's something that we're going to quickly be drilling down into and looking for partners and pursuing and securing projects. So at this point, I will turn it over to Council for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Angelique. Anybody have any questions to ask or of the presentation?
I just want to, I'll just say I'm really thankful to see this, because it's something, sometimes we don't always think about these types of avenues for economic development. Like, to be honest, it wasn't something that was really on my radar, so that's why I appreciate that we have you working for us, doing this work for us. It kind of opens your eyes to new possibilities, so I appreciate that.
Actually, I have probably one point. I saw in the presentation that Evan did, there's limited capacity on the lines coming to Western Nova Scotia. Could those lines be improved to have more capacity, or why wouldn't they be? With Newfoundland coming on, with Muskrat Falls, why wouldn't we be doing that? Is it because that's green energy?
I guess it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg kind of situation where on one hand, you need the local generation to be strong enough that you can export energy on a scale that makes it appetizing for Nova Scotia Power to install upgrades to their transmission lines. Or we have to start consuming so much energy down here that we're taxing the system. And again, they feel the need to upgrade the lines. I think we're really just right on that cusp right now, and we have to take some action in order to make things move. But the reality is that we can either reduce the amount of energy that we are consuming by inputting efficiency upgrades within the housing stock and building stock within our region, which would lower the capacity that is being utilized right now on the lines, or we can generate more locally and have smart grids, which would take some of the space off of those transmission lines as well. So we're looking at some approaches that effectively allow us to build up our own region and take some action in our own hands. But the alternative is, of course, that Nova Scotia Power could upgrade these lines. It just may be very costly.
Anybody else? Calvin.
I have a question. I'm just trying to make sure I understood correctly about the power to hydrogen. And I think you mentioned, geez, I can't even think of the word, hydrolysis or whatever.
Hydrolysis?
Yeah, using, I guess, I would think of that as underneath the fishing boat when you're sailing around. So how exactly does power to hydrogen work?
So that one's complicated because it's definitely a technology that's not really where it needs to be yet for it to be utilized. But it's something where we are looking towards 2050 in our strategic document that we know that it's going to become an option down the road. So we flagged it for that purpose. But effectively what you'd be doing is if you continue to generate green energy overnight, but you're not necessarily using the full load and you're not necessarily exporting the full load, then you can take the excess that is being generated and you can use that to effectively pull hydrogen either out of water or out of the atmosphere. I'm not really 100% sure. And you would store it as a fuel inside some kind of container, and then it would be utilized on the fishing vessels. It's considered a very dense form of fuel, similar to how diesel is presently used on the boats because it's so dense. So it would effectively make it so that we could use green energy to power the boats someday down the road instead of diesel, and therefore have a closer to net zero approach.
Interesting. Interesting. Any other questions? Yes, City News.
Thank you. So the how the energy is being generated, is it too early to speculate or talk about who would actually manage that situation? So obviously you're putting in, the proposition is solar, wind, all these different options. So is part of the work that they're doing looking at a local utility, or is it more something that Nova Scotia Power would be engaged in, or both?
We're exploring all the options that are available, but I believe that the bylaws for the province do not allow for the formation of an additional utility in the province. So it's possible that we can find a way to make that happen. And if so, it would probably be the best course of action. We put the most power in our own hands, and any funds generated would be kept in the local economy that much more. But I'm not sure that it's technically something that's feasible. So if not, we'll work with Nova Scotia Power to the best of our ability on that.
Oh, so there are other municipal utilities that are existing today.
Yes.
I guess invariably, if the possibility is
Another one, then I suppose it'd be the possibility of those existing ones expanding into other municipalities. I guess in theory, that's not impossible, is it?
That option's also being explored, but I can't say for certain how realistic it is yet.
Yeah, I realize it's probably a little bit asked those kind of questions.
Dr. Donovan?
Another question, I'm looking at the global appetite available. So this federal Investing in Canada plan, Invest Nova Scotia, Federal Build Canada Small Communities Fund, Are those all for like government municipal units, or those apply for like private sector or?
I think
Most, if not all of them, where maybe there's a smaller percentage of funding that's available if you're a corporation or a business. But if you're a municipality, I believe that the funding is able to allocate more funds towards the project. So I think there's options for both paths.
Else? If not, I guess I'd like to thank you for the presentation. Certainly very informative and interesting. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Merci. Okay.
I hope I'm still around by 2050. So I can see it.
Kind of, yeah, long ways away, but it's not that long far away.
I'll be 92. I'll be 101.
We're all trying to figure out how old we'll be when 2050 is.
I'll be in the ground.
Okay, we'll go with the adoption of the minutes, number 4. Regular council meeting minutes, September the 8th, 2020.
Don't move. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And nay, motion carried. The Argyle Recreation Commission minutes, June 18, 2020.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And nay, motion carried. Next is the Audit Committee minutes, September the 8th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Business arising from the minutes, we have none on this. Somebody from council has any questions? Not? We'll move on to the financial statement of this 2020. I would like to ask Ayo if you wouldn't mind to take on that file, if you would mind, sir.
Thank you. The Director of Finance sends her regrets. So the financial report is at the end of August 31st, 2020. It is still early in the game to predict the year, but there are some positive signs that I'll be pointing out to you as council. So first of all, in usual form, I start at the back and will say that the surplus that we're predicting for the year is $136,000, of which 121 would belong to the municipality. The remainder would belong to West Pubnico, Tusket, Middle East, and Wedgeport, either water or sewer surpluses. So they don't actually belong to you; they belong to those committees. But they do; they are reflected in this number. So of the 136, the biggest, basically, if I go back to page 1, approximately half, it's basically half and half where the 130 or the 121 is derived. It's basically derived about 60,000 from revenues, of which most of that has to do with the transfer taxes and investment income that we, in both cases, had a lot of uncertainty at the time that the budget was being made. So most of the municipalities across Nova Scotia predicted that deed transfer taxes and investment on revenue, on interest income on your cash flow would be reduced based on COVID impacts. And what we've seen is the return on investments is better than what we predicted, but more specifically that the deed transfer taxes are beyond any expectation that we had. And so I think we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, how the housing market is really caught fire, pardon the expression, but it's really picked up considerably. I think people are looking, there's all sorts of reasons why. Construction is more challenging than it was before, materials are more expensive. That could be causing people to choose to buy versus build. There are people from outside of Nova Scotia that are choosing to live in Nova Scotia. There are houses that are being you know, that they're receiving offers sight unseen, like, you know, that is happening on a fairly regular basis, and it's across Nova Scotia. So that was not the prediction that we would have had as administrators. You know, we don't get a pandemic every year, so we don't always know how that's going to go. But certainly this impact has been, in my opinion, across most Nova Scotia. They'll see that their estimated transfer tax and what actually happened were two different things. So right now, we're actually, not only are we way ahead of budget, we're actually expected to have more transfer tax than we ever did in a global pandemic. So that is a very unusual number, but it's good news. It's good news because you know, what we were predicting to spend this year and what we were predicting to take from operational reserves, as Councillor D'Entremont would say, we save for a rainy day and it's raining. So just as it turns out, Argyle doesn't get rain. So we may not need as much operating reserve as we predicted. But that being said, there's other expenses. So I'll just move into the expenses. We are still only at August, so that could slow down considerably. There's still some, you know, with transfer taxes, it's based on transactions, so we don't know. That could slow right down. In terms of expenditures, I will just note a couple things. Your grants to organizations expenditures is in the negative, and that is because of the decision to increase the contribution to the Coquemont Fin Cut for the Congrès Mondial. Yes. So the Congrès Mondial, we had only predicted 12.5 this year. We didn't know how fast it'd get on track on the go as a board. So they did get on track, and they asked for the first 2 of 5 years, which was more than 12.5. So council actually approved that decision. So what you see there is the prorated amount. So you're not seeing the full amount there, you're seeing a prorated amount of the grant. So each month that goes by, we're prorating a portion of that 100,000 into your expenses. Okay? So at the end of the year, your grants to organizations is going to be you know, between 65 and 80 overspent. And so now there'll be other places where we have savings, but you know, we just talked about transfer tax being quite a bit higher. Well, it looks like they might match themselves up. So in terms of the other expenses, we are seeing slower than expected in some fire protection. That's not surprising because training has been quite challenging, and that's one of the bigger expenses that we have that's not predictable. Environmental health services, we see sewage and water slightly ahead in every category. Typically what happens, that's usually timing, and we do typically show a surplus every year for West Pumlico and Wedgeport, depending on the activity that we have. So, but typically we have small surpluses in those areas. Environmental development, again, a lot of small numbers, but all in all, even with that unpredicted or unbudgeted amount to the Congrès Mondial, we are still ahead on expenditures compared to budget. So again, I indicated that about 60,000 was revenue and 60,000 is expenses. So while we're behind by 28 on that line, we obviously caught up in other lines to be 60 ahead in the other expenses. Again, this is early days. You know, we still don't know if COVID's going to hit us differently. So there's still some unpredictability here. But in terms of cash flow from a taxation collection perspective, it is better than last year and certainly better than planned, because that was one of the concerns we had, that people would choose to make choices based on conflict of bills that we would not necessarily be on the list, on the high end of the list, but that's not the case. Our residents have been very, very, very diligent at paying their property taxes. So that's the summary of the financial report at August 31. As is the case, we don't go into too many details until the quarters are done. So next meeting where we talk about financial reports, we'll likely look at September, which will be a little later because of the election, and we'll get a more comprehensive view of where we're at. So unless there are any questions or concerns, that would be the financial report.
Councillor Albright?
And didn't we get an announcement that we would be, yeah, we're going to be getting some financial help because of COVID, right?
Yes, so.
I mean, I know we don't know how much yet,
No.
but that will bump us.
That is not included in here
Right.
at all, so.
Great question.
So
Great.
what I don't know is how it's gonna be rolled out.
Right.
I'm part of a committee that's working actively with the province to see what do they need to get in order to roll it out. The concerns would be accountability, because again, the provinces, the municipalities across the province make predictions based on a lot of non-data.
Right.
So we're into month 4 or 5 of this year's COVID and this fiscal year's COVID, and so we know a lot more than what we did when we had submitted that request. So I don't know if we'll get it over 2 years and how that will work. What do we need to do to prove how much?
Yeah.
But we would have asked for approximately 200 and, I wanna say 30,000, it could be 250. So if that came exactly as requested, that is not included here, and it is, so if that money comes in, that will certainly have a tremendous impact on this financial report.
Okay.
Thank you for raising that.
Any other questions? Yeah. I have one, CEO Muse, on the revenue side, local government, we're 5,054, it's not a lot, but I'm just interested where that revenue, where that would be, it's not a whole lot, but
Yeah.
what would affect that? I think it's my question.
Most of that difference is timing. I don't expect to be a significant negative there at the end of the year. The types of services that we provide to other governments include my services to airport. We have IT services sold to multiple organizations, including the REN. And so the REN also has a small fee for my services for accounting support. Those kinds of services. Yeah, so it's provided to other governments, meaning other municipal level. So a lot of that is just a billing difference, so we either didn't complete the work in the same rate that the budget would predicted, or we just haven't billed for that work yet. So I don't expect any major differences there. If anything, it'll be a positive, because we've provided a lot of additional work, especially on the IT side. For McKeel and other organizations, it may result in an increase, but it'd be small increase.
Of course. Thank you for that. Any further questions? If not, I think we should have a motion to accept, I would think, CMUs. We should have a motion to accept financial.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, nay, motion carried. Okay, next item is for decision and discussion. Pellet heat feasibility study request for a pilot project. And looking at the, what we have, what we were sent as attachments, it seems that there's companies looking to possibly make studies into the feasibility of pellet burning, I guess. I'd like to pass that on to our CAO, where he might be more well-versed than I am on this.
I will start, and Hans, our Public Works Director, is here, and he's happy to get into it as well. So I'll just really spend like 25 seconds on it, and then have Hans take it the rest of the way. Basically, West 4 is a company that its responsibility is to address wood demand and supply of Nova Scotia. So they have a mandate in Nova Scotia to deal with, how do you maximize the use of wood on Crown land. So they have associated themselves with an organization called Torchlight Resources, and both organizations approached our Public Works Director initially to talk about the possibility of doing a feasibility study at their cost for the municipality of Argyle to determine whether or not it would be practical to invest in residential wood pellet heat. So on that, I'll pass it to Hans for any other details that he may want to add.
Thank you, Hans. If you would go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity to present this briefly. to attention. As said, we were approached by consultants from Torchlights and with the opportunity to look into the feasibility of heats. It's pellet heats. It's a heating system that uses pellets and wood chips to heat individual homes, or even as small district heating systems you can implement into subdivisions, or even in large towns. It's an innovative technology that's largely used in Europe right now in combination with a lot of other energy production facilities like waste burning or waste to energy. So it's a very unique, and I think an interesting and sustainable opportunity for us to look into this opportunity if this would work for us, and because we have that challenge of being rural and not living so densely, and this opportunity is also in alignment with, or it's supporting the REN's work with improving the energy grids around here, because this technology does not look just at heating, it's also could be combined heat and electricity production at an appropriate scale. So these two companies, West 4, are currently operating and managing the forest for Western Nova Scotia, and largely focusing on harvesting lumber for construction, for the paper industry, and the pulp production. Their analysis, so they're trying to improve their forest management, and saying 20% of their harvest is being thrown out as unsuitable for anything. So that's just waste and not going anywhere, but they have to cut it out just to get access to the actual woods that they want. So they're looking for markets to really to use these 20% and to improve the forest management around here. So this feasibility study it's coming out of a fund that's currently offered for the wood transition from the pulp transition. So there's a $50 million fund that was offered to transition from pulp into the wood for the wood industry. So West 4 would apply for this funds and would use us as a model municipality, or model site, as a pilot project to showcase if a individual or how this industry would improve our how this would improve us around here. So it pretty much we're looking at keeping all the investments and all the funding within Western Nova Scotia or Southwestern Nova Scotia. It's such a it's an innovative technology that's largely used in Europe. They switched over years ago, and that type of industry, and so you're reactivating the forestry industry, and it creates jobs locally because using the woods and create heats at low cost for residents, and you create jobs for the local economy. So it's pretty much compared to oil. You keep the money in your community, almost all of it. Currently, if you compare to oil, 90% of that leaves the country. It doesn't even stay here. So it creates jobs, keeps the economy going, and it improves the life of our residents. So this feasibility study would look at installing 200 individual wood burners in each household. Not 200 in each, but 200 households will be improved. And we would use federal funding through the ICIP funding stream to cover 75% of the capital charges, and the other 25% could be either through private investors or through the residents. Same what we run with Wedgeport right now, just what we do with the Wedgeport sewer, we do the same with the heating system. So we're entering the heat, we're selling heat as a municipality. So this is what we're looking at with this feasibility study. Again, there's no guarantee because West 4 is applying for this fund, which is only provided for current industries that are involved with forestry. So we as a municipality, we can't directly apply for that fund, but West Fork can, and they're using us as a pilot project. So this is what we're looking for to open up a new industry around here. It's the same what Evan already said, it's chicken and egg situation. We need to create demands in order to attract businesses down here to open up shop and produce pallets locally and all that stuff. So this is what we're looking at, creating the egg.
Yes, Board News?
So did I understand that you said that there would be some installed in some houses, not during the study?
No, not during the study. The study would just use this as an example, the 200 units, and would trying to understand what it would take, what would be the cost to the residents, to the municipality. How would this all look like if we use individual furnaces that are high efficiency wood pellet furnaces? They operate completely automatically. They use 98% efficiency and have a very low environmental impact. So it's compared to like one furnace has the same emissions as 200 wood furnaces.
Right.
So it's very low, and
Okay.
so we could.
Okay, now I understand.
No.
Because I know someone in our municipality that does have a pellet furnace, so, and apparently they like how it works and the efficiency of it as well. So the study itself is not going to cost the municipality anything, so I would like to move that council accept the West Fork Torchlight Resources request to participate in the study at no cost to Argyle to determine the feasibility of using wood pellet technology for a residential heating source for our residents.
Moved and seconded. Any more questions?
Yes, I have a
Okay,
question.
did?
Thank you. The only thing I'm looking at, and it all sounds good and everything, it may be a great thing, I don't know. I know I guess I have to be careful how I say this so I don't get myself in trouble. I know there's another area in a province where they were gonna take the good wood, turn it into lumber and all this, and use the scrap and the wood that was not so good for a type of energy. But it seems like once they started cutting, they were cutting large swaths of land, and most of the wood is going for energy and not going for lumber or anything like that. And I just hate to see in a few years' time, all of our, or a lot of our forests around here all cut down to be used for wood pellets. That's the only thing I'd like to say on that. I'd be a bit cautious, that's all. If it
Oh,
ever gets to that.
that's a valid question, because clear cut is always fear, and it's a dangerous way to manage a forest.
It is.
The demands or the amount that needs to produce is not that high that you have to clear cut the entire southwestern Nova Scotia. So you really focus on the 20% that is usually waste products, and that's plenty to fulfill the demands. Currently we're growing that demands, and you can use any waste wood material, even out of the construction and demolition industry. You can use good woods and make that into wood chips or wood pellets, so you even reduce the waste on our waste facilities. So the opportunities are quite, not endless, but it's very versatile. And of course, we have to understand first how this all overall looks, and what are the costs are, which woods, and how this all would operate, and what the future would look like, and what else is needed to continue this, and so we're not just starting something and then it goes nowhere.
I like that idea, because actually I was into the dump, I guess, today, and there's mounds and mounds of wood in there, and I was thinking to myself, it's too bad it couldn't be used for something like it's, just there. No, thank you, I like that.
Any further questions? Anybody? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Motion carried. Okay, next, 7B, Article P31, Flexible Work Schedule Policy. I was reading over this and some good points, and I'd like to ask the CAO if you wouldn't mind to go over, give the highlights of these,
Sure.
what it's about.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just on the last topic, I know we went by it, but you might have seen some similarities in the work that was done, that was being proposed, and the work that the REN was presenting. So the REN is involved in this process and will be involved in the process. So it does align well with what they were doing. So I just want to make that point. Like, it was accidental that both presentations occurred on the same day, but I'm thankful that it did, because then it would align all of the work they were doing. So the flexible work schedule you have received, so this can be approved tonight. So you've had your 7-day notice. Essentially, the flex policy has, we had one drafted but never fully endorsed it. We did it, there were some flex arrangements made in the past, but since COVID occurred, we really saw an opportunity to expand what's possible in a work environment. So essentially, I have in my inbox, waiting for this to be approved, a bunch of flex requests for people that have provided that they would like to see an alternate way of doing work. So there's two ways that happens. One is that you can work longer hours in a particular day to a max. You can't work, 20-hour days, but you can work longer so that you can have some time off later in the week or later in the month. The other is the work from home request. So the work from home request, fits very well in COVID. Unfortunately, not everybody can fully take advantage of that.
No, you can't drive a truck from home.
No, you can't. I tried. It did not go well. So the key is finding the key. Anyway, so there is that also that option, but it's limited in its scope and use. So in instances where some people could do that on a regular basis, we would look at it on a case by case. So the policy just outlines, what will we do and it gets reviewed from time to time. And the key, of course, is to make sure that it's as balanced as possible. It can't be equal, but we try to do it as equitable as possible. And then, of course, it triggers other questions around storm days and, who gets storm days and who doesn't if you're working from home. And so it just, other policies might be impacted by this and by COVID, in fact.
Wow.
So
Never thought of that.
it just, so this is just one of the, one of the policies we're looking to implement. More will come, but as we're basically taking them one at a time, and bringing them to you one at a time to not overwhelm us or overwhelm you with the types of policies.
Just one
Go ahead, Dr. Dodson, go ahead.
just one question. So would this policy only be in effect if we're under a provincial state of emergency, or would this be something you would have free reign over whenever you wanted to use it?
It would be, it's not only in the state of emergency, it would be our policy, which means that every request is considered as individual requests, and we have to determine how that would work. So ultimately what happens is the department heads and or the CAO have to approve an arrangement, and they have to be reviewed to see if they're effective or not.
I just see it as another way of opening up the gap between public and private. I mean, the private industry doesn't have nowhere near the flexibility as what the public has, the place has. So I just see it mainly as something that might be, I don't know how to say it the right way, but I mean, it's opening even a further gap, in my opinion. And I can see it's state of emergency, but if you go to work, you go to work. If you sit, you sit home.
Yeah.
And if there's no state of emergency, you go to work. That's the way I see it.
So our experience has been a little different. I think that it's true that in some cases it does provide that gap between business and private, but there are a lot of private industry that have done away with big buildings and they now do a lot of work from home. Like, so in fact, a lot of people that work in our area are able to do that because they work for companies in the US or in Singapore, and they do work from home. What we have found is, and the reason why we like the flexibility is that we found that people, in some cases, people were more efficient when they did work at home because there were less interruption. So things like, so what we found was, like, if you're working on a big project, we found that that was quite effective if you did it from home, uninterrupted. I hear what you're saying, and I think in some cases it's absolutely the case that it does provide that gap. But in other cases, private industry is already doing this. And what we saw was it was in a lot of cases beneficial. We're not saying that you work from home 5 days a week. We're saying that you might work from home occasionally 1 or 2 days a week, or you have a flex schedule that allows you to be home, but you're still putting in your 35 hours. So similar to truck driving, right? Like, you don't have a set.
We get the 35 hours on Wednesday.
Right. Exactly. So it's allowing that to happen in a different way for public office. But, like, your concern is well taken.
Warden Hughes.
Yeah, going back to the private sector and the, I think since we've gone through what we've gone through, COVID, and a lot of most private companies, they were working from home, not most, but a lot of private companies, and I think they're finding, probably you're gonna see that is gonna happen more and more, because they're seeing the cost saving for having these offices and whatever, and I think that's gonna happen more and more now, even with the private sector, now that they've proven that, yes, it can work. And in some cases, I think you're right. It works more efficiently if they're working from home.
And the purpose of the policy is to manage that situation as well.
right.
It's not because what will happen without a policy, I'll get these requests, right?
Yes.
Because people have benefited in some cases from that arrangement, and it's just a way to kind of manage it in a way that, okay, yes, under certain circumstances it's absolutely allowed, and in others it's not so much.
And I wonder, are you saving some, sorry, kind of jumped in there.
All right.
I'm wondering, are you saving any mileage doing this? Because I'm thinking if people have to come in for meetings and those types of things, if they're being paid mileage, if they can, because I know, like, even through recreation, we're doing all our meetings now through Zoom. Is that something that would factor in if they're able to?
To a very low amount. I think where we're saving a lot of money is a lot of the out of community travel that is now doing Zoom.
Right.
All the meetings that NSFM, AMA, provincial, regional, all sorts of different meetings for staff and council.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a tremendous savings in that area because of COVID. In terms of the mileage, there would be occasions, but it would be a very small amount. Most of the mileage would be considered personal. If they're not coming into work, they're working from home, it would be a personal expense 95% of the time, right? But the answer is yes, it's just a really small amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Digney.
Thank you. I had one of the same concerns as what Councillor Donaldson had, but then I looked down working from home request and I see on 5.1C does not decrease the level of service, and that there one made me quite happy really, because if I had people coming to me down in Pubnico and say, Dignan, I went up to the municipal office the other day and there's hardly anyone working there and I want to see so-and-so and they're not around now, they work from home, that would upset me. If it upsets them, it would upset me. But by what I see right now, it's at least worth giving a try to, I believe, and we can see how it's working. I'm sure we'll hear from our CAO how it is working, and that, so at this point in time, I'd be willing to make a motion that we go with the flexible work schedules, and it's going to be taken care of by our CAO and see how it works.
Okay.
Just one more little question.
Yeah. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So is some of the problem because of the close confinement here, or is, like with the new building, will you see less demand for this request?
That's a fantastic question. The demand, I think one of the many reasons why somebody would prefer to work from home, you just described. Like when somebody has to walk through your office in order to get to theirs.
Yes.
It is a very close confined, and we did see in some cases, reduced amount of noise with COVID because there were less people less rumblings in the office, right? So that would be one of probably the many reasons. Now, a new building may reduce the demand for that. We're hoping that the workflow is a little bit better so that whether staff is there or not, that they're effective. That the technology now allows us to do a lot from the home. But I think one of the reasons, yes, would be this building for sure. There are many others that I don't, some of them are personal, some of them are professional, some of them are, right, so, but the efficiency of work would be our major concern, and are you increasing that efficiency by sometimes taking a project home for 6-7 hours? And
Okay.
in a lot of cases, the answer is yes.
Question?
Question being called, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
My name, motion carried. Okay, next one would be 7C, Audit Committee member attachment. We have one attachment, and for the Audit Committee, it requires that a member of the public be appointed to the committee. A call went out, and Renaud D'Entremont has volunteered, and we need a motion required to accept Renaud D'Entremont to the Audit Committee.
I'll make the motion to accept Renaud D'Entremont.
And I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
My name, motion carried.
So just on that,
Yes, please.
just very quickly, two things that you should know. Number one, we had to put a community member into audit committee because the province has mandated that. And not only do they want somebody from the committee, they want them to be financially literate. And Renaud is definitely, oh yeah, he's very, very competent.
Yes.
And he's a wonderful, we're lucky to have him as a member.
Very good.
For sure.
So thanks for that.
Sounds great, yeah. Next item we have under D, Yarmouth Airport-Voting member. And the Yarmouth International Airport Corporation Board is represented by Argyle Council. We have our Warden Muse and Councillor LeBlanc both sit on the board. Councillor LeBlanc is not reoffering, so I guess we need another alternate member. Does this need COUs? Does this need to be done before the next the election?
Well, the reason why I raise it is that there's a very good chance there'll be another meeting, and we just want to be in a situation where we weren't in a situation where we were not represented. So Warden Muse would come in as an alternate for sure, in case Lucien is unlikely to attend. So it's just, it could be temporary. It could be like November, we could switch up the committees again, right? So this is until November.
Well, makes sense.
You answered, that was my question. So moved.
Who would we name?
We need an alternate.
Oh, we need an alternate.
Yeah, no, the Warden Muse has moved out.
I misunderstood, I thought
No.
the warden was gonna fit, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, an alternate for one meeting?
Yeah, okay. Junior's interested?
Okay.
Councillor Murphy? Does somebody move that? Or do we?
I'd make a motion that
Please.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, that Councillor Murphy be the alternate for the International Airport Corporation. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Try my name, motion carried. Thank you, Junior, for that. Next item,
Oh, my iPad again.
request for letter of congratulations to Vaughne Madden. Vaughne Madden has been appointed the Director General for the Congrès Mondial, 7th Congrès Mondial, which will be held between Clare and Argyle in 2024. And she obviously has accepted the position. She had worked prior to this on the 2004, was it, James?
For here, yeah.
For 2004 Congrès Mondial, so she's very versed in that category. So I guess the request is to send a letter of congratulations.
I would move that we send a letter of congratulations to Vaughne Madden for
Second.
her position.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
My nay, motion carried. Next item, Eel Brook Fire-Request for funding for truck. As we are aware, the last meeting, the Eel Brook Fire Department was looking at getting a truck that was smacked or nashed in, and it needed to be replaced, and the insurance company came through with $396,000 to replace that, that bumper. So now they're looking for, asking the municipality to help them into the purchase of a pumper rescue truck. And I guess from there, it's an additional amount of money. And I would like CEO Muse to maybe fill us in a little more on just what the numbers are, because the request that was and what the actual number is a little different. So I prefer CEO Muse would take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you've had the opportunity to look at this report. The report is a little lengthy because the request is considerable, so felt it required a little bit more detail. So the original ask was for $242,000 and change, and that did not factor in the rebate ability of the HST. So after that was considered, the adjusted request would be $182,566. Now this is adjusted by myself. I did vet the number with the fire chief, and he didn't disagree with the number, understood why it was a different number. So we, at the time that we supported Quinnen and East Kent, both of those happened in 18 and 19 respectively. And after the first one, after they came through, council asked for a policy. Well, that policy was never brought to you as council. I would call that a COVID casualty. So there's a draft policy that the staff has drafted, but did not fill in all the blanks that it required in order to bring you a full policy. So that means that you don't have a policy to follow, but that doesn't mean you can't make a decision. We make decisions without policy all the time. So the history of it is that you are aware, is that $150,000 was given to Quinnen on the purchase of a new truck. That was done in 2018. We're in I guess we're going into year 3 of that. So it was 150, but it was 25,000 a year for, I guess that would be 6 years, wouldn't it? 6 years. So and a very similar arrangement with East Kent, except East Kent bought a less expensive vehicle, a rescue vehicle, number one, and number two, that was shared with the municipality of Yarmouth. So their request was 15,000 over 5, I believe, a total of 45, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Total of 75.
75.
sorry?
Total of 75.
15 times 5.
15 times 5.
Okay, well, it may not have been that much. Let me just double check here.
Yes.
I have it in front of me.
I thought it was, but
Yeah, I caught that on after we were
Was
speaking.
it
yeah.
75?
I thought
Is that
it
your
was
recollection?
seems to me it was 15 for 5 years.
I believe so.
I missed that meeting, so I wasn't here at that time.
Yeah, that would be 70. The math would go to 75.
Yeah, I would.
So I agree with your math.
You just don't agree with my,
I just.
I know.
No, I believe that I believe that that's a mistake in the report. I believe
Yes.
you are correct.
I think,
So-
I'm pretty sure it was 75.
Yeah. If it wasn't 15 over 5, it was 15 over 4. Either number is.
Yeah,
is-
exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so I
It is
know.
15 for sure.
I know you have a solid memory on that because it was in your district.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so the report does not indicate that number. You should, my apologies for that error. The warden is correct. It was 75.
Yeah.
So, that being said, so those are the two amounts that we would have contributed without a policy, but both of which would have been influenced by how you approach them in the same way, a certain amount every year. So we have not established any maximum or minimum funding for this. What we said was we would put in a policy that helped fire departments that could not, on their rate alone, buy a new truck. That was the intent. So Quinnen could not do it, and Kent could not do it in those two instances, largely due to their size. So when we first talked about this, it was really focusing in on the smaller fire trucks.
That's right.
But we have an unusual situation in this case. We have an opportunity that was presented based on an accident that occurred and a recommendation that's coming from your fire chief in Eel Brook that is at the same time as an area rate that is quite high for a new building for a fire station. And there's no question the fire station is the priority one. That's everybody's priority one. Everybody that is engaged in this believe that to be the first priority. So, so we are in a situation where we are considering a request that is quite unique, and that while Eel Brook under normal circumstances would and should be able to set the rate accordingly to buy a fire truck of this nature and of this cost, they cannot in this circumstance get there. And so that was their conclusion. And from an administrative perspective, I agreed with that conclusion, because I'm not convinced that the rate they have now is sufficient to pay for the building in the same way that they wish the building to be paid. That is aggressively over a 10-year period. And I'm talking 10 years from now, not 10 years from the time it started. So I think there's a very, very high risk that rate will be insufficient unless something changes, i.e. drastic reduction of costs or drastic increase of another revenue source. So I share the concern of the fire chief in that respect, that the rate is really not accessible. So the question is, what do you do as council? And so there were some direct engagements with the chief. All of the questions are listed in the report and the answers included. So from my perspective, I'm not an expert in the purchase of fire trucks. We rely on our volunteers that spend a lot of time and energy in that area. So from an administrative perspective, not political, came to the conclusion that whether you agree with their conclusion or not, they put in the due diligence to try to make the best decision possible for their department. I suspect not everybody will agree with the decision to buy that particular truck. There'll be differing opinions around that, but my point is that they went out and looked. They went out and examined. They did price checks. They looked at used. They couldn't find used. They engaged outside volunteers outside of their department to help them with their decision. They went to Woods Harbor to look at a comparable truck that they knew would be very comparable. So they did their homework. So that was the other conclusion. I felt confident that they had done their homework in this. And there is a uniqueness of Eel Brook Fire in that they deliver a service on the Highway 103 that's quite unique. And so the other departments would have some of that, but Eel Brook has a lot of that. So that should be noted, that some of the questions we asked of the chief and of their department is, how does this truck work on the highway? And they felt like this truck actually was advantageous to events, because usually there's congestion in a lot of events, and if you can pile more volunteers in a truck and have that truck bigger to stave off some of the traffic that's coming in, that's advantageous to them, in their opinion. So there is a consideration on consolidation. I won't get into that because we don't really have a lot of information on department consolidation, but understand that might be a conversation that we'll hit in the future. So basically you have four options available to you. One is to deny the request, and to deny the request means that they'll buy a pump truck and they won't buy the combo truck, and they'll still need funds at the time that the rescue truck needs to be replaced. And they do have another 2 vehicles that need replacement at some point in the future. So this solution eliminates one of the trucks that would otherwise be purchased. So you're investing, or somebody is investing money now in order to solve a problem of the future. So that is an option to you. You can reject it, and they will take their insurance proceeds and get the car. The other options are you have loan, you have full loan of money. You can loan money to the fire department. So the Eel Brook Fire Department has an issue and it's timing. So you can create that space for them by not requiring payments on a loan. So that's an option. You can lend that money and you can choose the interest rate upon which that you lend that money, and you can lend a part or all of that to them. Obviously, to solve the problem is to tell them that they don't have to make payments until far in the future. Otherwise, you're not creating any solution for them. A full grant, you have the ability to grant them the entire request and not expect them to repay anything back. And that's I don't think I have to explain what that looks like. That's a pretty big investment. 182.5 would be the single largest one. Again, it is council's decision. It can, in fact, decide that. And the fourth, which is where the administration is recommending, but again, I'm saying that as an administrative recommendation, is that a hybrid be considered. And by a hybrid, I mean partial grant, partial loan. Why would that be? Is because other units that request money for this service would likely have received a grant. How many grants can you withstand at any given point? That's a question that we're going to have to address, obviously, at some point. But at this point, seeing as we have a very extraordinary request, we have to deal with it extraordinarily. And then, of course, the portion for the loan says, okay, well, you also have some more trucks that you may have to have assistance financially in the future. And so if we do this all now, that's probably it for them, right? So there's that. It gives you space to make a decision later on. If you give the entire grant, the decision's made and you're done, right? But if you give a loan grant, circumstances being changed, policy being implemented, the loan you can treat differently in the future if you choose to. Okay, if that makes sense. So, so what we're recommending, what I'm recommending is that it's initially loaned in full, and then there's a forgiveness amount that happens every year, up to an amount that is up to you, essentially. So that is a long description.
Board Muse, Richard will be ready to.
Okay, my question is, this is a rescue truck, and I know the chief has talked about certain years on vehicles, then it becomes a problem for insurance. Now, I don't know if he means insurance for them or if the insurance companies are saying once a vehicle reaches a certain age, then it makes a difference in the insurance that goes to the public, because they're almost classed as if there's no fire department. Okay, does the rescue truck fall into that, I wonder? Like, it's not a firefighting type of truck, it's a rescue truck. Another thing that I have a concern with is that's not the only vehicle that they have that is going to need replacing soon, right? So is it better to replace this one now and then, because they could come back, they could say in 3 years' time, we have to replace another truck. They're still going to have the loan or whatever on this one. They're still going to have their building loan. So I'm wondering how they're going to manage once those trucks, and is it more important to replace a pumper, or is it more important to replace the rescue truck? That's I think they have to look at the future. Like, it's not as if this is the only vehicle that they're going to have to replace in the near future, right? We don't usually. I mean, this is a good deal. There's no doubt, because they're replacing a truck for very, very little money, right? That if they had to buy that truck separately, that truck would cost them a lot more than what they're saying here, because they're incorporating that with another vehicle. But when the other trucks need to be replaced, we're not going to be able to pay for the full cost of the truck. So where do they go with that? Because they still have the loan, they still have. It's just something that kind of concerns me, not for me, but for them as well. And I know we don't have the answers.
Well, there is one answer to the question on the rescue. I don't believe the rescue is measured the same as your tanker and your pumper in terms of insurance.
Right.
and-
It is not,
Right.
I can tell you that, it is
So
not.
it doesn't fall in the same.
No,
Your primary tanker, your primary pumper,
Pumper,
and primary
right,
are the strongest considerations for insurance purposes.
Okay.
I can answer that question.
yes,
I know
yeah,
that, to the fire association.
yes. So, yeah.
Councillor Dawson.
Yes, well, we've all heard it many, many times, for us to spend more of our money in our municipality, and this is an initiative we've taken on, and we've started to help a lot of fire departments. And what Danny said, there's other fire departments gonna need trucks. We're just gonna have to deal with situation as they come up for whatever reason. But you call it a loan, you call it a grant, but either way, it's the taxpayers paying it. It's either on an area rate or it's overall tax rate, right? So, I mean, to me, I like the suggestion you got there. And when the fire department made their presentation, I was sold on the combination truck. I'm not gonna question that part of it anymore. And another thing, it's a big department. It covers from Lower Argyle to, I don't know how far up into Tuscan or how far beyond that. But I mean, it's an important fire department that covers a big area and is closer to some of the other fire departments that will need help, right? I mean, I remember a story years ago that they had a fire in Quinton and the Yarmouth Fire Department was there before the Quinton Fire Department. So, I mean, some of the small fire departments don't have the volunteers they need, and the bigger the department, the quicker you can mobilize, right? So I think we should go with Nicole's motion.
Well, I just want to add something too before I make the motion. I also agree with the motion because I'm a little bit worried, as Warden Muse said, about the future and when they will need another truck and then they're into their loan for their building, and I'm kind of concerned about that because then what? So I feel like it's a good idea to leave some money on the table so that when they do need to come back for another truck, there will still be some funding left for them. If we put all in now, that's all it will be. And we have to kind of think ahead as well because they have some needs further down the line. So with that in mind, I'm going to move that council support the request from the Eel Brook Volunteer Fire Department for the purchase of a combined rescue pumper truck, and that the additional funds needed to purchase this truck be paid by the municipality through a loan amounting to $187,500. On March 31st of each year for the next 5 years, $20,000 of this loan shall be forgiven by the municipality for a total forgiveness of $100,000. And the other one's separate, right?
Yes.
I will second that.
Councillor Dawson.
Just a question that I just want to make. I'm not a firefighter, but there's a couple of firefighters I think here. Just so I'm for my own ideal here. It says rescue pumper truck, so it's a rescue and a pumper truck, right? So
It is.
Yeah.
So it's not a full-blown pumper, but it's. So can someone kind of explain to me exactly what the capabilities are?
It'll be, chances are, their first vehicle out, and that to most calls, if not all calls. And it does have the capability of being a fire truck on scene, a pumper.
That's right.
And
So
that-
it carries water and
It
it's got a
carries
hose
water,
and
it carries
yeah.
hoses, it carries pumps,
Correct.
carries SCBA equipment, and it also carries all what they would need, and that are a lot of what they need.
Jaws of Life.
Yeah,
Did you go in there?
Jaws of Life, if they have it, I'm not sure, but yeah.
They do.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so, because that's the only thing I was gonna say, Mr. Warden, you were saying, like, as far as it's a rescue vehicle, but actually it's a fire truck as well. It's a
Oh,
pump.
that one, no, but I
It's-
meant
it's
the
a
one that
pumper.
they were replacing. The
No,
one-
but this one here is.
This one here
both.
is,
Yeah,
but the one they're replacing
Later on.
is a rescue truck only.
uh-huh.
Right,
Yeah,
but they're
the-
gonna incorporate it with this
That's
vehicle.
right, this here, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess just to finish my point, I've been thinking about this and grappling and trying to figure out, because it is a lot of money and, thinking about, and this is in my own mind, not wanting to set a precedent, but I just thought of how many times that I travel from my residence in Lower West, Pumlico, to Yarmouth in a week. And I don't even work in Yarmouth, right? And that stretch of highway. And, you know, if, you know, heaven forbid something happened to any of our residents that travel back and forth, you know, and not having the right equipment to deal with a traffic accident, you know, that would be a tragedy. And I use the analogy of lobster fishing, and, you know, when it comes to lobster fishing, you need to have proper equipment in order to catch lobsters or any kind of fishing, right? And your lobster traps are probably, you know, those are that's the piece of equipment that catches the lobsters that, you know, eventually, you know, makes you money so you can pay everything. So, you know, I guess the rescue truck, you know, in a stretch of highway would be your lobster trap. That would, you know, that would be the one that would,
I get you.
you know, take care of you if heaven forbid there was an accident. So I fully support this motion.
Any further questions?
And so do I, because I've been out with them on many's of calls, some good, not so good. And it's nice to see them there. A lot of times before we get there, they'd be out on 103. And God knows the way the ambulance service is going now down this end of the province, they could be the only people there for quite a while before an ambulance gets there. Because I'd much rather look in a bay and see a vehicle parked in there than go by a bay like I do day in, day out and see no vehicle parked in there. So.
So, just on the questions, just one of the things that struck me, and every answer here is like, yeah. One of the things that struck me when we were asking the chief about the combination vehicle and the advantages, one of the things was the first volunteers to get to the station are the ones that get behind the wheel. So his position or his logic was that vehicle has both rescue and pumper capabilities on site. So even if the person can't get to the station on time, if they arrive on scene, there's more available for them to address the safety issues or the emergency issues that is occurring. Number one. Number two, if you think about a reduced volunteer base, that even makes more sense. So in those cases, like I'm like you, I'm not that familiar as Councillor Digdon or Deputy Warden Surratt or others in the room. I'm not as familiar with that kind of apparatus and equipment, but that to me was quite compelling. That he was saying like it would actually improve the services on scene faster, because both of them are in the one.
Any other questions? I have a couple of small items that I don't want. One thing I don't want anybody here to forget is we have other departments out there that will be needing apparatus.
Yep.
Well, and you know, Minutes-Sept, Harbour Point, they're quite not the best of shape. Their vehicles I think there's one that's got a couple of years left. They're in quite a, so CMU, so that impact our ability, because ability to fund these other 2 or 3 departments I see that do need you know, units down the road. We had spoke about 2 years. Somebody coming and asking for money, we take 2 departments and go for 2 years or 4 years. I don't remember what our talk was about. Now we're going into, we have 2 already. This will be a 3rd one. What's going to happen? Let's say it's East Pumlico. It's Islandton District. What happens there if they come for a request? What kind of a situation are we in?
So I think.
What do you vision?
Well, I think if this motion was successful, first of all, this motion is different than the other 2. There is a loan grant combination. So I think it would depend on their need, and it would depend on how much they could actually generate on their own. I mean, the same logic applies. So first of all, it really puts this policy at the top of the pile of the work, right? Because we need to get, that policy needs to be, the policy was like, it's work you should get done, but now it's like work that must get done, to address that very question. I think that it depends on the training capacity of each of those fire departments, like what are they actually looking to achieve in terms of fire prevention, or not fire prevention, fire addressing fire. So I think that it certainly could open the speeding up of replacing fire trucks in the municipality. And so I guess the question as council you should ask yourselves is that a negative, is that a negative or is that a positive, right? Is that a precedent that you want to set, in fact? Or is it going to open up? So I think in every situation we'd have to analyze independently and as deeply as we did this. It could open the possibility of that. And I think we just have to be ready for that. And if it's a grant loan situation, then operating reserves may have to be used. You know, we did this smoothing out, and you're right, we did talk about doing, you know, 2 at a time, no more than 2 at a time, because we felt like we couldn't do it all at once. But, you know, the need is all at once. If the need is all at once, then we may have to make a different decision as council. That's possible, that we may have to do that. And again, the reserves that are put in place, that are set aside for rainy days, maybe all these things happen at once, not the way that you intended them to, but that's how it happened all the same. I think it's important to get the policy out, and I think it's important that the discussion on, you know, how many vehicles do you actually need in order to operate a fire service across the municipality.
But isn't that a discussion other than this motion? Like that's got nothing to do with this motion, it's on the floor right now.
That's true.
It's a discussion
But I
related.
think, no, I'd
So
like
you
to
want us
correct
to
you.
withdraw the motion so we can talk about all that stuff later?
Councillor Donaldson, my question was, does that leave money for the other departments to come in and ask for a truck?
So what are you saying, delay this motion till we know that?
No, my question is if other departments come in, will it affect them to get a vehicle? And I think that's a fair question that's been asked
It's
by fire
completely
chief.
fair, it's completely fair, but it's not this motion.
Yeah, I feel it isn't, that's why I brought it up.
Okay, I disagree.
Yeah, and I agree that it is, because I've been asked by fire chief, to be honest with you.
Well, okay.
You know, so I'm bringing the question up because I was asked, you know, and
I know, but
and I represent the
it's
people.
not in the context of this particular motion.
Sure it does.
Not that Tom.
Sure it does, because if somebody comes in for a truck and they want 25,000, does it limit us from being able to pass that money on to the
So
department?
we gotta withdraw this motion?
No,
till
my
we know?
question is to the CAO, if
That's
it's an
another
effective.
discussion.
No, it is not.
It's not a discussion on this motion,
Yes,
and
it
I'll
is.
argue that till midnight.
And I argue till midnight it is, only I will keep it at that. We may as well move on, we're not getting anywhere.
You may be alone if you're gonna argue to midnight.
Definitely.
If I
We
may
have
ask,
a, yes, go
if
ahead.
I may ask one question, the only thing I'm looking at is above this suggested motion, and I might be missing something, where it's here. It was 182,500, and down for the suggested motion, it's 187,500.
Yeah, it is slightly different purposely to consider a form of interest. So if there was an interest component associated
Okay.
with that. So there was a difference. It doesn't have to be different, but it was intentionally different.
Okay.
Question?
Question has been asked, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Underline nay, motion carried. Next item we have is the 5-year capital investment plan.
There's another motion to be made, there wasn't there?
Was that?
There
Oh,
is-
was there another
Yep,
motion?
there is another
Oh,
motion. I'll make that
motion.
motion that the CAO be tasked to create and secure a loan agreement between the Eel Brook Volunteer Fire Department and the municipality of the District of Argyle with an interest rate set at 1% and a repayment plan that supports the needs of the department in the construction of a new building.
Second that.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
What, second? Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Councillor Dickey?
Thank you. The only thing I'd like to ask, is the interest rate at 1%, is that what the other fire departments pay as well?
This would be the first loan to any fire department, recommending 1% because our cost would be 2% and we're splitting the cost.
Okay,
So that's the background of the 1%. This is the first one.
okay, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the motion, any other questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Underline nay, motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. We have a 5-year capital investment plan, and I guess I'll pass that on to our CAO to maybe have a look and explain what's on there.
So you've had a lot of time to look at this, so I'm really gonna go high level on this, but I will because I've spent a lot of time on other things. So so this is not the actual capital investment plan that gets submitted to the province. That has a lot of like, very strange numbers associated with it, very difficult to read. So what I did was I took that information and tried to put it in something a bit more understandable or readable to anyone. And I mean that because the provincial one is very, very challenging to read. So what is listed here are the list of possible projects that would have been identified either by motion or by need. So for instance, so if you see the list might have things that you wouldn't expect, and it may have things that you would like to see that aren't there. I will go through the list very quickly and just mention the projects. You're well aware of most of these projects, so if any of them, if you have any questions on any of them, just ask after I go through them quickly. So one is the admin building, we know that one. Wedgeport Septic Phase 3, that's ongoing. East Pubnico well retrofit and tank repair. So those are two separate projects. Well retrofit's the first one. West Pubnico dewatering and sensors. The dewatering tender is out already, and the sensors are for future improvements. Comfort Solar Wedgeport's expected to happen this year. JA at Hatfield Court is just some finishing touches on paving in order to finish that road. That's the road in Tuscot. Argyle Trails retrofit. What this number represents is a commitment to spend an amount of money every year on the trails that is outside of the typical funding that we would do. So this is a long-term commitment that we're proposing, and I'm incorporating in a long-term plan, because if we're ever going to get these trails up and going, it's not enough the way that we're doing the way the trail, with all due respect to the Trails Association. This would be over and above their work, so it would get them in a better spot. We may not spend $50,000 a year. We may save until we get to 150 and do a big job. So it's just an annual commitment. Tuscot Sewer retrofits. That's anticipating the addition and or replacement of the sand filtration system that may or may not be required. But right now I'm putting the worst case scenario in for you so that you can understand what that looks like financially. We're at year 15 of that facility, so we may not need full replacement right now, but there's talk of that possibility. Fire ponds, retro, and safety, you're well aware of that project. Some of that is underway now. Rural internet upgrades, if you don't know what that is, you haven't been coming to the meetings. So I know Councillor Donaldson knows what that is. Track and field upgrade, down the year. Community well drought upgrades, so that's a new one that we added. We don't know if that number is accurate. We just know that we have a problem that we must address, and our community is asking us to address. Cummos Hill Wharf, so there was some major, there's some damage to the wharf. We own that wharf now. So if that wharf is going to be used for recreation purposes, it requires a repair. And that's the estimated amount of the repair, and that's based on a quote that was received. Ibsen Bridge retrofit, there's two pieces. One is the partial planning, and the rest is the remaining project. This may or may not be enough to do the whole job. So I did the best guess based on the structural need, not the cosmetic need. So this could be higher, but I wanted to put it on the radar. West Pubnico Library is on the radar. You put that on the radar. I just don't know when it's going to happen. So you'll see zeros all the way through, but it's on the list. And then I separated regional projects. Yarmouth Ferry Terminal, that's a contribution agreement that you've made, or a motion to contribute. So it's not actually our project. And the last one is the Mariner Centre expansion. That's by far the single largest project. Just because you see the big number at 10 million doesn't mean that that's our portion. Okay. So what I'm estimating is in those, where you see those projected costs, it's the projection of the costs in those particular years. So that may or may not be the case. So if you look at year 1 and 2, it's pretty accurate. Like the current year, we got it pretty much handled. We know what's happening. Maybe not all of it happens exactly the way that we planned, but those projects are either underway. They're underway and they'll get to a certain point, they may not get exactly to the point that's disclosed here, but then the next year shows the rest of the project in a lot of cases. So that's the first page, that lists the project, and then on the second page, you'll find that it shows where's the money coming from. Okay, so it's not just that you have the project, where's the money coming from? So just very quickly, most of the money that's being used for money that we have direct control over, about 2.6 million is gas tax. Now keep in mind, you get about 350 a year in gas tax. So yes, that's a lot of money being spent on projects, but you already started with 1.5. You already have 1.5, and these projects are over time. So you'll be dipping in pretty solid on the gas tax reserves, but that's what they're for, right? They're not to sit on and look at. Although I like to, when the audit financial statements come in, maybe I like to see it there. But they are meant to invest in communities. So and so the other one is the capital reserve. So we're expecting about 708,000 to be spent in the capital reserve. There's a big section here on debt. Our biggest project at Min Building. Again, I'm repeating myself here, but the reason why we borrowed money is because we're getting 450,000 in a grant. And so it made absolutely zero sense to do anything other than borrow. You had to do them both. In order to get the grant, you had to borrow. So what's happening is that the payment of the debt is over time. So you're not seeing the full impact of the building in these numbers. What we're predicting is that you'll be spending, about $360,000 a year in debt repayments for 10 years. And most of that will come out of your gas tax, and the rest will come out of your capital reserve. About 5 years ago, we went to the community and we told them it would cost them between 2.2 and 2.4, I believe, to construct the admin building. It's going to cost them a little over $2 million. So it cost them less on this project than we told them it would 5 years ago. And that's because of the net zero. That's because we used our gas tax. That's because we used accessibility funds and FCN grants. So that's the reason why we were able to do that. So, so for some of these projects, I will just say that, first of all, because you're passing a 5-year plan doesn't mean you have to stick to this plan. Every year we change it, and in some years it's drastic. So I won't spend a ton of time on that. Just understand that this is the project list. If you want to, if you want to keep on these projects, this is the project list, and feel free to ask for updates at any point. Most of the time you get them through our staff reports, but you don't always get the financial reports for those.
Councillor Dawson.
Do you need a motion for this, or?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept this five-year capital plan. I do notice that the $670,000 for rural internet, you have that all in 1 year. I suspect it probably won't be all paid out 1 year.
It's possible. I suspect it could be over a multi-year period. Yes.
But the 670,000 is a nice number.
Second.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. The only thing I'd like to ask is the West Pubnico dewatering and sensors, $285,000. Although that's being used up right now as gas tax, and that's being paid back though to the municipality through the users of the system, is it?
So this would be on the dewatering itself, the actual current year dewatering, because as you know, there might have been another incident where we purchased a dewatering. No, the answer is no. That will be a contribution of gas tax to the West Pubnico sewer,
Okay.
Which has been done for Tusket and others as well. Yeah, so that will not require, that particular purchase will not require any additional funds from the user.
Keep talking, I love it. No problem. Thank you.
Now, if we get to sell the other
Oh, never mind,
vehicle-
Stop talking now.
Yeah.
I have a question on the Mariner Center. That's probably an estimate, is it, Salem News? That 876, I mean, I know your number would,
The Mariner Center project is a $20 million project.
right,
So the money that we put in there represents only a part of that project. So if you see, there was 10 million there. So, and that's broken out in a lot of different ways,
Yes.
right? So if we don't get federal provincial funding, that project does not happen. It just simply does not. So what would happen is, most likely, if we got funding, would be about between 70 and 75% would come from provincial and federal sources, which would leave the difference shared amongst the 3 municipal units as partners. Our portion of that would be 32% and change.
that's what I was missing.
So that would have to come, that potentially could come from, it's unlikely to come from gas tax, because there's already provincial and federal funding engaged in that project. So you're either gonna have to borrow and rate it over time, or you're going to have to use reserves that exist 5 years from now, or a combination of both in order to make that project happen. But I think if you have a project of that size, you'll be asking your residents to participate in a tax increase. And it would be, and we don't know what that number is, but there would be two components of that. One would be the capital and the other would be operations. It's a huge service increase, and so I think, and we know the project's not happening tomorrow, so we have time to engage our residents in that discussion.
And I honestly think too, that's where we have to go and look for these big sponsors that we had talked about at first when we were getting into it. See how much money they wanna put into it, cause it's one thing to build it, but it's another thing to operate it year after year after year, so it's a lot of money.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. There's no more questions. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And my name, motion carried. Next item is the letter of support, Musée Acadienne Nouveaux Horizons project. And we have an attachment. Look at this. So that, the project is approximately $20,000. And the project is for, you know what, I didn't read this.
It's
That would
for,
be
I
sorry.
guess
Could you help me on
it's
that?
for seniors who are isolated, especially during this COVID time. It's a project to, I guess, help them set up the museum in a way that, you know, people can participate, and you know, all they're looking for is a letter of support, and they're applying for a grant for $20,000 from, I'm just trying to think what it's called, but the name was here somewhere, but anyway, yeah. So that's what they're looking for in a nutshell.
Exactly.
So I'd make that a motion.
I'll second that motion, and our good warden said he'd make up the letter, so, yeah, we'll work.
He's known to do that, right?
Since he is a senior,
Well, I didn't,
there's no conflict there, is there?
I'm not going there, you question me.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Very much, motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to correspondence for information. We have the Western County Regional Library annual report, 8-page attachment for your reading pleasure. We have the Western County Regional Library board minutes, attachment to that. There is a letter to Minister Wilson, an attachment of 2 pages. Anybody wishing to make any comments on anything, just jump in as I'm
That's about
going.
the mosquito issue.
What's
That
that?
one's about the mosquito issue.
Shoot, that's
It's
so
good
bad.
for residents to know that that's, that's being addressed, yeah.
Letter of concern to Minister Jordan, and there's 3 attachments, and those are all letters for on the fishery issue that's out there. Provincial Volunteer Award virtual presentation, 5 attachments to that. Attachment of 5 pages.
I watched that, by the way.
Did you? Was yesterday? Was it?
It was yesterday.
The ECL News told me it was yesterday. Yes. You watched that? Was it okay?
Yeah, It was good?
Although it's on Zoom,
It's on.
unfortunately, yeah. It'll,
It's on.
yeah. Very good. Thank you, Morning News. Letter from the REN board, an attachment on that. Manager Center, a new CAO.
Okay.
Name is, how did he, Doran Hadid. Hadid. So he's been around the area for quite a while, and he certainly has certainly a good resume I was reading, and surely should be a quite good benefit for the Mariner Center to move forward, especially on the expansion part of it. Financial requests, there's none. Agenda topics for next meeting, or notice of meetings notice of motion by councilors, anything that you would.
The only thing I will say is still a lot of people around here running out of water. One lady ran out this afternoon while I've been in here at the meeting this evening. I just had Rose, a lady by the name of Rose, contact me, and I'll be calling her back on my way home, wanting to know about getting water. And also they were distributing water tonight at the West Pubnico Fire Hall that we sent up that was sent up to us from the provincial government. And some of the boxes had 3 4-liter jugs in them instead of 4. So I guess they're short changing us there a little bit too. So anyway, that's what I was told. So yeah, by a reliable source. So yeah,
Okay. Mine went dry, but it's come up 3 feet.
Does it come up?
3 feet. Holy
Yeah.
Johns.
That is very strange.
Very strange.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say maybe 6, 12 inches.
It's a really deep well. I don't know if it's that rain we had a few weeks ago that just finally
Could be.
get down to that level. I have no idea, but.
I don't know if anybody's experienced this, but since we're on talking about water, some people said when it rains, their wells will go down
Right
4,
away.
5, 6, 10 inches sometimes,
Right away.
before it'll come, right away before they come back.
The next
That's
said
the
mine-
weirdest, is that right, yours?
Mine has
It's
that.
better to put water on top of the ground than put it in your well.
Dump it in the well.
Yeah. It's better to put it on top of the ground because it soaks in. I asked. there was
It
one
filters through as it
guy-
goes down.
I was, one guy down home saying that they were arguing about water or something, and the guy said, he said to him, he said, I've only got like maybe a foot. And he said to the other guy, he says, how much you got? He says, 40 feet. He said, 40 feet. He said, where's your well? He said, Lake George.
Okay.
Makes sense.
He said that was
Makes
right
sense,
there.
right on.
Okay.
Good source. Okay, nothing else, question period, any questions, CO News or Scott? Nothing there, no in camera, so we're ready for.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, so.
Who said that?